year ago that they came out with some new guidelines for hypertension. And I guess at the time what caught my attention about this was that they hadn't changed the guidelines for hypertension in like 15 years. So, all right, wow, that's kind of interesting. Well, why are they changing these guidelines? What's the importance of hypertension? First of all, what is hypertension? Does anyone know? High blood pressure, all right? And high blood pressure is now defined as, your systolic blood pressure being over 130. It used to be 140. Doesn't sound like a huge difference, but why, why the concern at all? Well, there's a lot of things that blood pressure can do for you, or do to you, I should say, because high blood pressure is dangerous. So one of the things, you have these narrowed arteries. It can cause coronary artery disease. You can get an enlarged heart, damage to your brain, dementia, cognitive impairment, damage to your eyes. This is an unfun list. So the fact that there's concern about hypertension is a good thing. Now, the study that came out that caught my attention was this one right here, and they had a lot of interesting things here that we've discussed and are worthy of note. First of all, this was a prospective study. Now, what does that mean? A prospective study is a different synonym for a longitudinal study. What was the importance of longitudinal studies? Where did you hear that recently?
Shows causation.
Yeah, it's one of the things you can use to help establish causation, because longitudinal studies, unlike the cross-sectional studies we looked at in section 11.2, longitudinal studies can help eliminate confounding variables. You try and keep things balanced between, the control group and the test group, etc., to try and eliminate those confounding variables. And this is exactly what it was. It was a prospective study. They did 30 years of follow-up on 4 different urban areas. So that's a lot of follow-up. That's why they don't undertake these studies lightly, is because, can you imagine trying to track people for 30 years? That's a long time. That's a really long time. But then you get these people, you collect their data, and one of the things that they highlighted was physical activity is something that helps moderate hypertension, that people who tend to be physically active tend to have less hypertension. And they measured that by talking to people, interviewing them, and getting some index of their physical activity. And one of the things that they said here is that there's an association between physical activity and lower odds of having hypertension. That's good. We like to say a little bit more. We'd like to say that it causes this. And there's a couple things that kind of meet that criteria in this study. First of all, that it was a longitudinal study. But one of the other things I wanted to get to is down here. Let me see if I can't find it. Yeah. The study adds to the literature by incorporating 30 years of follow-up data in the cardiac cohort, and says it is notable that both physical level, or that is your physical activity level and slope, were independently associated with hypertension onset, even after adjusting for potential confounders. So they're looking at these things that could impact the relationship between hypertension and physical activity, and they're adjusting for them to try and eliminate that relationship. Now, that relationship was notable in one other exception. They actually gave hypertension index, and they gave a regression equation. And let me be clear about this. Interpreting this is pretty nice, and is something that I'd like you to be able to do for your exam. What do I mean by that? Well, your hypertension incidence decreases by 2 units every time your physical activity score increases by 1 unit. So that's kind of a nice, easy interpretation here. You're just interpreting the slope of this line. So let me rewrite that line, and I want to double check that one number here, but let's write it like this: y equals negative 2x plus 4. That's literally what this is going on here. There's your slope. And I want you to be able to interpret the slope. Slope says, if I increase x by 1, I decrease y by 2. Because going up 1 here means you got another negative 2 added to your total here. So increasing your physical activity score by 1 decreases your hypertension incidence by 2. That's the kind of interpretation I'd like you to have for these kinds of things on an exam. If I was to give you a regression line, you should be able to determine that. There's some other nice things in here as well that I'm not really going to hold you responsible for, but there's a 95% CI. What do you think CI stands for after a whole semester worth of statistics? Confidence interval. Was that a significant confidence level interval? Well, you got a p-value of 0.002. That's going to pass muster at either the 0.05 or 0.01 level. So it's a significant confidence level. Let's see, there's another confidence level, etc. There's another one in here someplace. It's not in these resorts. But it was just an interesting study. And, kind of urges people to, be a little bit active in their daily lives. Doesn't necessarily mean going to the gym, and pumping iron or doing cardio for an hour or two, but just means being active, walking, etc., doing something other than just being in a chair. So, good stuff. Any comments or questions? Any thoughts on this?
Is there going to be like a blurb identical to this, something like that?
So on an exam, what I could give you would be maybe a question like, oh, somebody was collecting Uber data in Las Vegas, and they found that the fare for your Uber ride was 3.5 times the number of miles plus 7. So what would that mean?
So for every mile
For every additional mile, going to cost you an extra $3.50. How much does it cost just to get into the Uber? $7. So there you go. So being able to interpret that kind of stuff in words is, one of the skills that I'd like you to have on an exam.
it wasn't making any sense.
Just clicked?
Yeah.
Okay, so going back here, every time we increase your level of physical activity by 1, it decreases the incidence of hypertension by 2. So this, I gotta feel that there's a digit missing here, because otherwise it just doesn't quite make sense. But that's on me. I gotta go look back at the study for that. Any other comments or questions? All righty.